King Eadwig's coronation scandal. Eadwig came to the throne around age 14, inheriting a realm previously led by powerhouse rulers like his uncle Athelstan. Expectations were high, reality less so. Chroniclers remember Eadwig not for statecraft, but for impulsivity and sexual indiscretion. The tale goes like this. During or immediately after his coronation feast, Eadwig disappeared. Court officials eventually found him in bed with two women, one said to be Ælfgifu, who later became his wife, and the other, her mother, Æthelgifu. Was it real? Accounts conflict, and the earliest written version comes roughly 50 years later, so historians tread carefully. Rumors of such behavior, true or amplified, undermined Eadwig among nobles and churchmen. Relationships within the royal family frayed, political support fractured. By 957, Mercia and Northumbria recognized his brother Edgar instead, effectively splitting the kingdom. Eadwig retained Wessex until his death 2 years later. Eadwig's scandal shows how sexual rumor can become political weaponry, a theme that echoes through later royal history. King Edward II and Piers Gaveston. Edward II reigned 1307 to 1327. A king's consuming attachment to his favorite, romantic or not, alienates nobles, strains an international marriage, and helps spark his downfall. In 1308, Edward II wed Isabella of France, sealing diplomacy between England and the French crown. Yet even before the wedding, Edward's heart, or loyalty, was deeply tied to Piers Gaveston, a charismatic Gascon knight who'd been close to the future king since about 1300. Edward's father, Edward I, had already tried to pry them apart, exiling Gaveston in February 1307. When the elder king died later that year, the new king, Edward II, countered immediately. He recalled Gaveston, lavished titles upon him, and made him Earl of Cornwall, a move that enraged powerful barons. Under pressure from his in-laws, notably Philip IV of France, Isabella's father, and English nobles, Edward reluctantly agreed to Gaveston's exile in 1308. But by 1309, Gaveston was back, privilege restored. Historians debate the intimacy of the relationship. Whether romantic, emotional, or grounded in trust and shared youth, one thing is clear. Edward's preferential treatment of Gaveston, and later of Hugh Despenser the Younger, inflamed aristocratic resentment. Years of factional conflict, military failures, and the king's reliance on favorites eroded royal authority. Edward II was eventually deposed in 1327, a fall to which the Gaveston affair and its political reverberations undeniably contributed. Henry VIII and the fall of Anne Boleyn. Henry VIII reigned 1509 to 1547. Anne Boleyn executed May 19, 1336. Passion, power, and charges of treason. A queen loses her head amid dynastic pressure. Henry VIII had already rocked Europe by breaking with Rome and establishing the Church of England so he could annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon and wed Anne Boleyn. But royal desire did not rest. By spring 1536, Anne was arrested on accusations of adultery with multiple men, including her own brother, George Boleyn, and of plotting the king's death. The charges, highly sensational, carried the weight of treason. Most modern historians view the case against Anne as manufactured. Two broad interpretations dominate. Henry himself sought to remove Anne and clear the way to marry Jane Seymour, or Thomas Cromwell, the king's powerful advisor, orchestrated the fall, seeing Anne as an obstacle to his political and religious agenda. Both motives may have mixed. Anne Boleyn was beheaded by sword on May 19, 1336. Her death reinforced the terrifying stakes of royal marriage. A queen could be elevated, accused, and eliminated in terrifyingly short order. The future George IV and Maria Fitzherbert. Long before he wore the crown, the flamboyant Prince George, later George IV, had built a reputation for extravagance, debt, and scandal. Among his most dramatic personal choices, a private marriage to Maria Fitzherbert in 1785. Roman Catholic, a faith disqualifying under under the 1701 Act of Settlement, which barred those married to Catholics from the line of succession. Married without the king's required consent under the Royal Marriages Act 1772 applies to descendants of George II. Prince George reportedly hounded Fitzherbert with emotional appeals until she agreed. A Church of England clergyman performed the ceremony, but legally, under British law, the marriage didn't count, and publicly, it could not stand. In 1795, Prince George entered an official, dynastically acceptable marriage to Caroline of Brunswick. Even so, his complex on-again, off-again relationship with Fitzherbert continued for years, ending decisively only around 1811. The Fitzherbert marriage highlights the tension between personal desire and constitutional restriction, a recurring royal theme. Edward VIII and Wallis Simpson. In Britain's tradition, the monarch's legitimacy was long intertwined with divine will, mediated through the Church of England. A king did not choose the crown chose him. Enter Edward VIII. Simpson was an American socialite and twice divorced while her second husband was still living. To the British establishment, political leaders, church hierarchy, and much of the press, she was untenable as queen consort for the sovereign who bore the title Defender of the Faith. Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin warned the king, remain and abandon the marriage, or marry and abdicate. The constitutional stakes were enormous. The empire watched. On 11th December 1936, Edward VIII addressed the nation by radio, announcing his abdication. His reign had lasted less than a year. His brother ascended as George VI, and Edward became Duke of Windsor. The crisis tested the monarchy's relevance in a modern media age, and underscored how romantic choices can trigger constitutional realignment. Princess Margaret and Group Captain Peter Townsend. Peter Townsend, a decorated RAF officer and former equerry to King George VI, divorced his wife in 1952. His closeness with Princess Margaret soon deepened. During Queen Elizabeth II's coronation, cameras caught Margaret gently brushing lint from Townsend's uniform, a small gesture that sparked big headlines. Because the monarch is supreme governor of the Church of England, royal marriages carry religious and symbolic weight. A union between Margaret and a divorced man raised alarms within the church, the cabinet, and palace advisors, who feared public backlash and constitutional awkwardness so soon after Elizabeth's ascension. Despite their desire to marry, resistance mounted. In 1955, Princess Margaret issued a formal statement announcing that she would not wed Townsend, citing her duty to the Commonwealth and loyalty to the Church. Though both moved on, the story remained one of the 20th century's most poignant examples of royal duty overruling personal happiness. Queen Elizabeth II's annus horribilis. In a speech at London's Guildhall marking the 40th year of her reign, Queen Elizabeth II famously labeled 1992 her annus horribilis, a horrible year. She wasn't exaggerating. Princess Anne finalized her divorce from Captain Mark Phillips. Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson separated amid relentless tabloid scrutiny. The unraveling marriage of Prince Charles and Diana, Princess of Wales, spilled further into public view through media leaks, tell-alls, and recordings, deepening the global fascination and discomfort with royal private life. Unlike medieval rumor or 18th century court gossip, 1990's scandal unfolded in real time. Press, television, and paparazzi amplified every rift. The monarchy's carefully guarded mystique gave way to 24-hour speculation. As if to cap the chaos, Windsor Castle, one of the Queen's residences, suffered a devastating fire just 4 days before the speech in which she coined the phrase heard around the world. 1992 marked a turning point in how the public, press, and the monarchy negotiated privacy, accountability, and image. The crown entered the modern celebrity era, whether it wanted to or not.